16th meeting of the Lake Forest City Council. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Honorable James Cowhey.
Here.
Alderman Novit.
Here.
Alderman Waldeck.
Here.
Alderman Moore.
Here.
Alderman Pandaleon.
Here.
Alderman Morsch absent. Alderman Schoenheider.
Here.
Alderman Palmer.
Here.
Alderman Adelman.
Here.
8 present, 1 absent. Mr. Mayor, we have a quorum.
Thank you. Will you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, as you can see, we have a full house this evening. We have a few awards to give out, and our first order of business this evening is comments by mayors. And I'd like to first recognize that we have and welcome Troop 46 of the Boy Scouts. I think I saw you coming up the stairs there. I want to thank you for being here tonight. I know you're working on your Eagle Merit Badge, citizenship in the community. So thanks for being here and good luck. I hope you finish your Eagle, make it to Eagle. Just a quick on that, I know my older son is an Eagle Scout. I know Bob Palmer spent a lot of time with the Scouts and his 2 boys. And I just want to tell you, though, if you make it, there's only about 2 or 3% of you ever make it to an Eagle Scout. But my oldest son, after he graduated from college and was interviewing, he actually had that on his resume. And to this day, he tells me that that's one of the most asked questions in his interview process every time he goes for a job is that he was an Eagle Scout. So it means a lot, and good luck to you. I hope you make it through. Our next item on the agenda this evening is a presentation of the Mayor's Award for Young Artists Enrichment Program. This is by Vicki Marasco, and Vicki's going to say a little about the Art League and then hand out some awards.
Well, first of all, we want to thank the Mayor Cowhey, and the council for allowing us to be here this evening, kind of taking over your program for a short while. And the Mayor has very kindly given this award out for the Deerpath Art League's Young Artist Enrichment Program for the last 3 years now. And so, again, thank you for having us here. We appreciate it very much. The Deerpath Art League has this program in which we do outreach work in North Chicago, and we also really work very hard to nurture the arts in our own community as well as in North Chicago. And what we did this year, every March we reserve our gallery space over at the Gorton Center, not for professional artists, but for emerging artists, kindergarten through college. And this year, we started out 5 years ago with 2 schools. This year, we're up to 16 schools. So the Mayor has 16 awards to give out this evening. And what we would like to do is we're going to call them up, pretty much youngest to oldest. And we would like for you to come up here, and I will hand you the award, and then you can come on in and shake the Mayor's hand, and we'll have you all stay here until everyone is completed, okay? And I think most of you are here, so if I call out a name and you're not, I'm sorry about that. Tried to check you all in. So are we ready to start?
Sure.
Okay. First, representing Cherokee Elementary School, we have Daniel Baker. Okay. You might want to, should we prop that open? From Everett Elementary School, we have Ella Badger. From Sheridan Elementary School, we have Pamela Shattuck. From A.J. Katzenmeyer Elementary School in North Chicago, we have Jakayla Hughes. From Forestall Elementary School in North Chicago, we have Caroline Moreno. And from South Elementary School in North Chicago, we have Tristan Mitchell. Good job. From Lake Forest Country Day School in Lake Forest, we have Brooke Farrell. From the School of St. Mary in Lake Forest, we have Maya Krakos. From Deerpath Middle School, we have Riley Lanigan. Okay, I guess Riley couldn't make it tonight. From the Deerpath Middle School's APT Art Fair, we have Samantha Yang. From Neal Math and Science Academy in North Chicago, we have Kiana Body. From Lake Bluff Middle School, we have Michelle Thunder. From Lake Forest High School, we have Katina Dubler. From the Lake Forest Academy, do we have room? Lake Forest Academy, we have David DeMay. Two more. From Woodlands Academy, we have Abby Kendall. And from Lake Forest College, we have Nora Logue. That's yes, if you could, all the kids, that'd be great.
I would put the taller kids in the back row and the smaller children in the front row, and then the city council stand up and the mayor get in the middle. How's that? That's good. Yeah, right. I feel like a wedding photographer. Perfect. How's that, little Bill? All right, all the moms and dads get their picture first. Bill, you gotta get out of the way. I don't think the city council's ever gotten their picture taken.
Isn't that the next meeting?
Sucking the chin out.
Yeah, right, exactly. We'll see how it turns out. She can tell you later.
Did everybody get a picture? Want to get a picture? Yeah.
DPM.
She's from DPS.
No, she's not, no. They're private meeting.
Country Day?
Country Day, maybe.
I don't know, I couldn't hear what she was saying.
That's a lot more fun than ravines anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm thinking, God, I didn't even know about it until I, went through the packet and, oh,
Yeah, good stuff. And that means the TV audience is going to be real big for this one too, and the replays.
Oh, that's right. Everybody's going to want to see themselves. Well, my suspicion is they may not watch the whole thing. They'll watch the
Yeah,
part that they're on.
yeah, ratings will drop pretty quickly.
Should I have reminded everybody that they were all on television? Or should we have? Would have liked to see some of the artwork.
Yeah, actually, because there was one back there.
What a nice thing.
Yeah, that is good.
Don't leave. Don't leave.
Gee, I don't know how long they've been doing
Look
that.
back
My
at your
daughter's
kids
a
and what they
big
were good at.
artist. She used
Almost
to win
always
all
there was
kinds
a
of
point
stuff at Country Day when she was there.
which they weren't good at it,
I
but
don't
somebody
think they were doing
called
that back then.
some positive feedback,
3 years.
some
Yeah, okay.
event in their life, and
So the first year would have been her
Really
last
does.
year there, so that would have.
Geez, truly, everyone is leaving, and there's still some retirees and stuff, too. Mm-hmm. So,
so we're at City Council talking about ravine restoration with Mayor. It was about
Probably
mushroom.
about your berms.
No, it was about mushroom spots actually.
No.
But it had nothing to do with this. But I'm like, wow, this isn't televised.
Morel hunter.
Yeah, finance isn't televised, is it?
is there a way to keep this?
I think so. I think everything's televised. I think everything, all of
And I
them.
think if you let it go too long, then you have to.
We're going to resume with our rest of our
Keep getting my fingers
meeting
stuck all over
schedule.
the place.
I know. I just took a break.
Yeah, it gets too clammy after a while.
Then after all,
Yeah, those can start. And the positive part is the voices do want to get bigger, special.
Our next item this evening on the agenda is a resolution of appreciation for George Carpenter for 24 years of service. And I do have a resolution which I would like to read into the record this evening. Whereas George F. Carpenter has been a dedicated employee of the City of Lake Forest since April 12, 1988, whereas George F. Carpenter will honorably retire from the city on April 18, 2012, whereas George Carpenter served as a maintenance worker too for the water and sewer sections during his dedicated career. He was instrumental in the maintenance of the water distribution system as well as the storm and sanitary sewer systems. George has spent countless hours excavating and repairing water main breaks at any hour of the day and all types of weather conditions. George was an integral part of the city's snow removal operations in the role of the main line truck driver. Whereas George Carpenter has taken great care in the design of the distribution system's interconnects with Lake Bluff and Highland Park to ensure emergency backup supply of water to Lake Forest residents. George's drafting skills were well utilized in the design layout of the water and sewer shop, as well as the layout of the cold storage facility. Whereas George Carpenter has served on several employee committees, including the Safety Committee, as well as a founding member of the Employee Accident Review Board. George has continually been the go-to guy for special projects and has handled them thoroughly from start to finish. Now therefore be it resolved by the City Council of the City of Lake Forest that the council, on behalf of the administration and residents of the community, hereby expresses its appreciation and gratitude to George Carpenter for a public service faithfully performed, and be it further resolved that the city clerk be and hereby is instructed to deliver a copy of this resolution duly signed by the mayor to George Carpenter on the 16th day of April 2012.
I move to adopt the resolution.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And resolution is adopted, and I'd like to present, is George here? George, come on up. Congratulations.
George, do you want to say something?
Our next item on the agenda this evening is a proclamation of April 27 as Arbor Day. And I have a proclamation which I'd like to read as well into the record. Whereas Arbor Day will be officially observed in the state of Illinois on Friday, April 27, 2012 by proclamation of the governor, and the planting of trees on Arbor Day is a traditional activity throughout the state and the city of Lake Forest. And whereas Lake Forest, with its environment and natural areas, is particularly dedicated to the observance of this day and has consistently throughout its history enacted ordinances to preserve its trees and other natural assets. Whereas citizen groups, garden clubs, private and public institutions have actively supported preservation efforts and the renewal of natural areas through tree planting and landscape projects. And whereas a celebration of Arbor Day 2012 in Lake Forest will include the distribution of 2,000 bur oak seedlings to students in public and private elementary schools. And Arbor Day 2012 will be celebrated throughout the day in programs at schools and other locations and at Ragdale on Friday, April 27th at 9 a.m. where the city's official Arbor Day trees, one redbud tree, will be planted. And whereas in our city, wherever they are planted, increase property values, enhance our business and residential areas, beautify our community, and are a source of joy to gladden the hearts and promote the environmental well-being of present and future generations. Whereas the city of Lake Forest has been recognized as Tree City USA for 31 consecutive years by the National Arbor Day Foundation, now therefore, James J. Cowhey, Mayor of the City of Lake Forest, do hereby proclaim Friday, April 27th as Arbor Day in the City of Lake Forest, and I urge all citizens to support efforts to protect our trees and woodlands, to support our city's forestry program, and plant trees on this day, and to join in the celebration ceremonies. In witness hereof, I have set my hand and above the seal to the City of Lake Forest on the 16th of April, 2012. I ask for a motion for approval of this
Move to adopt the
proclamation.
proclamation.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
So go out and plant a tree on April 27th, and I know we have a presentation here later on by one of our forestry members about emerald ash borer and hopefully the possibility of planting more trees as well. That'll be up here later. That concludes my comments as mayor this evening. The next item on the agenda is comments by city manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. The only brief announcement I have this evening is that we have scheduled a joint meeting of the Park and Recreation Board and the Historic Preservation Commission on the Forest Park Master Plan. It'll be held on Thursday, May 3rd, and 6:30 p.m. at Gorton Community Center, with the hope of, after that joint meeting, answering all the questions, getting final approvals at the individual Park and Rec Board and the HPC Board, with the intent of trying to bring the final master plan to the City Council at your May 21st meeting. So I just wanted to mention that, and it will not be televised live because it's at Gorton, but it will be taped and replayed following the presentation that evening. So that concludes my report for this evening.
I have a quick question on that. Can you describe the purview of Parks and Rec and HPC on that topic? Do they cross over? Are they both doing the same thing? Does one do, I would assume HPC had something to do with the aesthetic and...
Well, they don't do the same thing. The Park and Rec Board has under city ordinance.
Just for Forest Park, just for the...
Forest Park is a park that is under the jurisdiction of the Park and Recreation Board. They basically are in charge of land uses, development of the park, and so forth. Because the park is located within the city's Historic Preservation District, the Historic Preservation Commission is involved from an aesthetic standpoint, looking at designs. If there are any structures that are built there, then they would get involved with the issuance or recommending to the City Council the issuance of certificate of appropriateness for that. But that in a nutshell is the difference. I don't know, Vic might put a sharper point on that.
The only thing I would add is that while the Historic Preservation Commission has specific jurisdictional responsibilities for certificates of appropriateness and the like, this was actually something that was posited with them by directive of the city council. The council can give them specific charges. This is one of those, and it was really to avoid having one of the recommending bodies go off and do its thing and then have it go in a different direction when it gets to another. Rather try to have their thought processes married early on during the planning stage before there's any actual construction going forward. And that was how the city council charged the Historic Preservation Commission in this instance.
Yeah, thank you. I was on HPC actually when it first came up there. I guess my question relates more to the topics that are being brought up at the event. Will there be a last word, excuse me, as a recommending body?
You are the last word.
We're the last word up here.
Right. You'll have a report coming to you from the Park and Recreation Board. You'll have a report coming to you from the HPC on the same master plan.
Okay.
Then ultimately, the city council will take those two reports and either accept, reject, or direct the plan back for further review.
Are there any, with the HPC, sometimes their opinions were binding and sometimes they were recommendations. Can you?
For this particular one, this is not a certificate of appropriateness process where they do have binding authority. This is a specific charge from the city council so that they are acting merely as a recommending body, ultimately for the council's edification and consideration. And again, this is only for the plan. The plan does not trigger any kind of activity other than to set the framework where future activity might be undertaken.
Okay, so there'll be two independent opinions. They won't be covering the left half, the right half, the top or the bottom. They'll both have opinions about the whole park, and we'll be balancing those.
Hopefully, they have the same.
Hopefully they do, yes, yes.
If there are any disagreements, yes, then it will ultimately be under the jurisdiction of the city council to decide what does that final plan look like.
Okay.
And could you go back over the schedule for that joint meeting again?
The joint meeting is Thursday, May 3rd at 6:30 PM. And then let me just get my dates right. The Park and Recreation Board right now is scheduled to meet at its regular meeting on May 8th. They're still working on scheduling the final date of the Historic Preservation Commission, but it will be sometime before your May 21st City Council meeting, at which time it will be on your agenda. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
Our next item on the agenda this evening is comments by council members. Yes, Michael.
Promise to be brief. Like many of you, I get calls periodically from constituents with a gripe or grievance about the city. And in a high percentage of those, I've been getting follow-up calls thanking me. And it's a good thing they can't see the stunned look on my face when I get those calls, because all I do is channel it to either Bob Kiely or Mary Van Arsdale or Chuck Meyer or Ramesh or Michael Thomas. And the speed with which the city's been responding has been phenomenal. So I want to thank you and the rest of your staff for being so prompt to react and making me look like the greatest alderman in the Fourth Ward. In the Fourth Ward. That's a pretty small field.
I think that would be the
Just want to know if
You guys are
Alderman
making me
Palmer has
look
anything to say
really
about
good, and I
that.
Is
thank
that a
you.
low bar or a high bar?
I think it would be the greater, there are only two of us, the greater alderman. I don't have a comment. I have a question to our city manager if he has any more information on how the state of Illinois is doing in passing its hands-free cell phone ordinance.
The best of my knowledge, they have made no progress since we last talked about this, and that too will be on your May 21st agenda. Because by that date, we will know, it has passed the House. It's currently sitting in the Senate. There's a question as to whether it will make it out of committee at the Senate. If it doesn't by your May 21st meeting, then it's pretty much dead on arrival for 2012.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I have one comment. I unfortunately am not going to be here next council meeting, May 7, to congratulate and/or roast outgoing Alderman Morsch. So I want to take this opportunity publicly to thank Tom for 6 years of really dedicated service. He has truly been a caring, compassionate person on the council and someone who cares deeply about our community. Tom has really been a thought leader in a lot of the things that have happened on the council, including taking the leadership role in the whole issue of affordable housing. And I just want to, on behalf of the residents of the 3rd Ward, certainly the residents of the community, thank Tom for his 6 years of dedicated work. He has been a wonderful co-partner in the 3rd Ward with me, and he'll be greatly missed on the council, and we wish him the best and look forward, I'm sure he's looking forward to a lot of very empty Monday evenings. But on behalf of all of us, certainly 3rd Ward and the community, I just want to publicly thank Tom for his 6 years of great dedicated service.
And I agree with Don wholeheartedly, but before Tom leaves council, because I know Don's, pushing him towards the door here, but
I want to see.
He's ready in his chair.
Yeah.
Now, on April 21st, Tom and the Affordable Housing Group are having a volunteer day for one of their projects. And I wanted to plug that. Again, there's volunteers that are welcome if they go to the city website. And in addition, there's a volunteer day for Forest Park on April 28th, which would be helping clean up the area, and that's run in conjunction with Parks and Recreation. So again, there's an opportunity to work with Tom on April 21st before he leaves council, where again, we have an opportunity to help him in one of the projects that he's truly pushed during the time he's been on council. So I'd love to see that be successful and love to have a great turnout for it.
And Kent, just to show that I'm not pushing him out the door, we also, one of his last acts will be to join me April 30th, 2 weeks from today, 7 p.m. at Municipal Services Building for the 3rd Ward Town Hall meeting. So for residents in the 3rd Ward, and even those of you who aren't, you're welcome to join Tom and I at 7 p.m. on the 30th.
And since I only heard nice things, that's your opportunity to roast him then.
You can count on it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other comments by Alderman? Yes.
We're not going to talk about the recycling carts in this meeting, are we? I don't see them on the agenda anywhere, although we talked about it at the Finance Committee. So I just want to pick up on something that we talked about at the Finance Committee meeting half an hour or so ago. All the residents of Lake Forest received a postcard last week describing the final stage, the second stage of the rollout of the recycling carts. There are two points I want to make just for the record and for information purposes. Number one, participating with the CART program does a couple of things. Number one, it allows for a much higher volume of materials and much more varied group of materials to be recycled, which not only earns revenue, more recycling revenue for the city, but also reduces the amount of money we have to spend sending all your other garbage to the landfill. So it's a double benefit to the city. In addition, the carts add a great deal of efficiency to the pickup process. So it's a very economically advantageous thing for all of us to do. It's also ecologically friendly. It's good in every single possible way. Those citizens who are not considering participating in the program because they don't like the look of the cart or the size of the cart, there are some options available to them, but those who don't participate are actually costing all the rest of our citizens a fairly significant amount of money. So I would just urge everybody to participate fully. What we have found in our household is we are now down to maybe 1 to 2 bags of regular trash a week from what had been 5 or 6. And we really only need 1 trash pickup a week anymore, although we still get 2. So I just want to put that plug in and get it on the record for all the people that are watching out there in television land.
Good. Any other comments?
Just further plug for the the recycling bins with the smaller size. There had been some comment early on that some of our residents were having difficulty fitting them in their garage because they took up too much space. But with the smaller size bin, the 35 capacity, it's easier to fit in the garage. For those who that was an issue with, we're at least increasing the options. So it's available, it's there, and you know, it's another way we're trying to accommodate.
Right. And I would just comment that we are very accommodating because I don't know of any other community that gives this many options on sizes of carts. It's typically just everybody gets the same cart, but I know we are trying to accommodate everybody in their wishes as much as we can, and obviously encourage them to recycle, so it's a good thing. Any other comments? If not, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda then, is opportunity for citizens to address the city council on non-agenda items. Anyone wish to address us on non-agenda items this evening? Hearing none, we'll move on to our items for the omnibus vote consideration. We have 12 items. I'm going to read each one of them for the record, and then the council can choose to take one, any, or all as you so desire. First being an award of a contract for Tanglewood Court and end of Basswood Road water main replacement project. Second item being a consideration of an ordinance adopting new fees related to development activity for incorporation into the supplemental fee schedule for the city of Lake Forest. The third being a consideration of an ordinance approving a fee schedule for the city of Lake Forest relating to an increase in water rates. The fourth being an approval of resolution required for bank purposes. The fifth being an award of contract for the development of the Phase 1 Restoration Management Plan for the Lake Forest Cemetery Ravine to Conservation Design Forum. Next being approval of landfill disposal fees for fiscal year 2013. Next item being a consideration and approval of an ordinance regarding the city's policies and procedures for disposing of city assets. Next item being approval of a resolution reallocating 2012 volume cap to the village of Buffalo Grove, Illinois. The next item being a resolution of appreciation for Louis Birchhofer for 20 years of service. The next being a resolution of appreciation for James Barker for 23 years of service. And the next item being a resolution of appreciation for Mark Weigold for 20 years of service. And the last item is being an approval of the April 2nd, 2012 City Council meeting minutes.
I move to approve the omnibus items as presented.
Second.
I have a roll call vote, please.
Alderman Novit.
Aye.
Alderman Waldeck.
Aye.
Alderman Moore.
Aye.
Alderman Pandaleon.
Aye.
Alderman Schoenheider.
Aye.
Alderman Palmer.
Aye.
Alderman Adelman.
Aye.
7 yeas, no nays, motion carries.
Thank you, Bertie. Our next item on the agenda is ordinances. We have one, which is a consideration of an ordinance amending the city code relating to video gaming terminals. This is a second reading and final approval, presented by City Manager Bob Kiely.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I think this is one of those items that people can never say we rushed through and acted on too hastily. Back in 2009, when the state changed their law related to gambling, they allowed that certain gaming terminals, video gaming terminals, would be permitted in establishments in town under the new laws. And some of you might recall back in 2009, they wanted to issue capital bonds
Are they currently legal? Because we haven't done this yet?
We do not have a prohibition, so yes, someone could do it.
And the revenue, this is just another form of revenue generation for the state, basically?
It
Like the
is.
lottery?
It is.
So,
And
State-promoted
not
gambling.
just the state, because the local communities or in the establishment where these units would be housed also gets a piece of the action, if you will. So there are some communities, and we may have included a copy of the newspaper article in your packet as well. There's actually some that are starting to rethink their positions, maybe even going back as a way of developing more revenue for their community. I'm not sure the city of Lake Forest is in that position and wants to take that action, but that is an opportunity.
Do we know if Wakanda likes their, isn't that the one in the area that's allowing, any feedback on,
We
Are they
have
happy?
not, we've not talked to any communities that currently allow it and have it.
And yeah, I'm showing signs of age, Bob. I was on council when this was originally considered, so it's been a while, but at least there was a feeling of council at that point in time that as a city, it wasn't a revenue flow that we really wanted to promote in this town. All the neighboring communities in the area of Lake Forest have banned it. I don't think there's one that's adjacent to Lake Forest that's approved it at this point in time. I, for one, I really just don't want to promote gambling within our city as a revenue source. I think it sends a bad message. The state of Illinois, unfortunately, in my mind, has sent a lot of bad messages on a lot of different issues that the state's confronting right now. The concept that they would actually attach funding to this, or at least send a message that they'd restrict funding, it's almost like a blackmail move in my mind, trying to force approval, and it's something as a city, unless we're forced to, I think we need to send a message to the state that we really don't want it. And I say that as a member of the community and as well as a member of council. So that's kind of the refresher on what happened in 2009. I'd be opposed to it at this point. And I hope the other members of council will be opposed.
I know the Chicago Crime Commission, of which I'm a director, has come out in opposition to it. So, and I'm opposed to it.
Yeah.
I'll move to grant final approval to the ordinance.
second?
Roll call vote, please.
Alderman Novit.
Aye.
Alderman Waldeck.
Aye.
Alderman Moore.
Aye.
Alderman Pandaleon.
Aye.
Alderman Schoenheider.
Aye.
Alderman Palmer.
Aye.
Alderman Adelman.
Aye.
7 yeas, no nays, motion carries.
Thank you, Bertie. Our next item on the agenda this evening is new business. The first being a report to City Council on response to the Emerald Ash Borer in Lake Forest. This is presented by Chuck Myers, Superintendent of Parks and Forestry.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council. I am here to give you a presentation on the response to the Emerald Ash Borer. I've also asked that Peter Gordon, City Forester, join me after the presentation and we'll take questions from there. So I wanted to just give you a very brief history. As you know, the Emerald Ash Borer is native to China. It was actually brought in by accident back in 2002 in cargo material in Detroit. It was identified in Illinois in 2006, probably came over with firewood, and then it was identified in Lake Forest in 2009. Since that time, it has spread greatly throughout the city. We're seeing it in all corners of the city. This is just a distribution map by county. You can see that it is spread throughout the Midwest. It's in Canada, actually up in the northern portions of Michigan now. The entire state of Michigan's covered. Illinois is getting there. Wisconsin is caught in the middle here. They're about to get a big blast of it, but it is going out here as well. So it is spreading quickly. The U.S. Forest Service has stated that the emerald ash borer is the most destructive forest insect introduced into North America in recent history. They further go on to say that our present ability to detect, contain, eradicate, or manage EAB infestations is limited, and that the eventual loss of the vast majority of ash trees in North America should be anticipated. I just wanted to give you a little bit of an idea of the ash population and what that means in Lake Forest. These numbers are based on an older inventory that was done. You can see that the largest component of our street tree population is maple, followed by ash, and they're both at about 20%. So when you look at the current infestation, you have to realize that it's estimated that before you start seeing emerald ash borer damage, it's already been here for 3 to 5 years. What that means is by the time it's identified, it's already well advanced in its numbers. So that's why they refer to it as an exponential increase. So we're seeing that now. Many communities have experienced this and warn others that when you first start to see it, be ready and get ready for a large outbreak. We've already removed over 125 infested trees. We have done a number of chemical treatments. We're continuing to do that this year. And we are anticipating, as I said, a huge increase in the next 5 to 8 years. It's a lot different than some of the other things that we've experienced, Dutch elm disease being one of them. So this is something that is critical right now. It will most likely, this wave will have passed through us in 5 to 8 years, as I said, and wiped out the ash. Very quickly, just a reminder on the life cycle of the emerald ash borer. The adults emerge in May and June. I would think this year maybe even earlier, on the earlier end because of the warm temperatures. Adults are active for about a month. They do a little bit of damage to the foliage, but that's not really a major part of why they're a problem. They mate, they lay eggs, the eggs hatch, the tiny little larvae bore down underneath the surface of the bark, just under the surface, and they feed in that layer. So they make tunnels throughout, and I've got a photo here I can show you, but in the winter, the larvae are still active to a certain point. Up in the upper left, you can see the adult magnified greatly. Right below it is what they look like on a leaf. You're not going to notice that even with higher numbers. That's not something that you're going to see flying around. They're pretty discreet. Up in the right-hand corner, that is the larva. They get up to about 1 inch, and you can see that it's in somewhat of a tunnel. That's where the real damage comes in. They are eating machines. They're eating the layer under the bark. What we typically do see is that lower right picture. That's the dead ash trees, and a lot of signs for that, but that's what it ends up showing up as. The other thing you'll see, as we're seeing in Lake Forest already, this is Forest Park. We actually, on the right or on the left, we tore the bark off of an infested tree. You can see those galleries, they're called, little serpentine galleries. They're tunnels running through there. Essentially, that's where the larva has moved around. The whole tree looks like that under the bark. And that is cutting off the tree's ability to transfer liquid, as in water and nutrients, through the tree system. So they call it girdling, but it's cutting that off. And then on the right, you can see these branches that are all speckled. That's not a direct result of the borer. That's actually the result of woodpeckers that pick at the bark. They can sense the larvae underneath, and they're there to feed on them. This is a sign of a very heavily infested tree. They don't do that to trees that just have a few larvae. That means you have a tree well along. That tree is not going to make it. This is on Field Drive in Conway Park. There's another dozen or so that are nearby that look like that. So as far as the impacts go, what this means to our urban forest, obviously the loss of canopy has significant impacts, both economically and environmentally, and I would add socially as well. But some of the things I'll point out, you know that trees have many benefits beyond their aesthetic and visual. I mean, we use them for blocking and for screens, for beauty. They add a lot to our community, clearly. But also stormwater runoff. The estimates on that are huge. Trees as a whole, the canopy intercepts water, rain as it falls. They're a big source of preventing runoff. And I've mentioned the aesthetic, but also decline in property values. And also the impact with having this many hazardous dead trees that are standing. That's a major concern. Ash trees typically, when they die, they don't hold up well. They become brittle much quicker than other trees, and obviously that's a concern for public safety. Trees that are along roadsides or parking lots, we need to get them out right away. So finally, the expenses associated with all of this, with removals and replacements, gets to be fairly large, as I'll show you. This chart, just quickly, just to show you the difference between Dutch elm disease and the emerald ash borer. We've been dealing with Dutch elm disease for a number of decades here in Lake Forest. It's been in the U.S. since 1928. As I mentioned, EAB has only been here since 2002. The Dutch elm disease is a disease, it's a fungus, whereas the emerald ash borer, obviously just the insect is impacting the trees. The Dutch elm disease is spread by an insect or by root grafts. But the emerald ash borer is spread by flight. Typically, the adults can fly only about a half a mile, though. So the reason people mention firewood is we can't really explain how a short flight like that could spread it from as fast as it has spread in the Midwest. And then the two things that I really wanted to highlight in yellow there are the rate that Dutch elm disease, I would consider that a moderate rate of spread. It's been around for a while. It's continues to be a problem, but it's a fairly moderate spread. Whereas, as I mentioned earlier, emerald ash borer is exponential. It's here. When it hits big. And then safety is the second big issue there. I wanted to point out again that Dutch elm disease trees, kind of a gradual thing. We see similar numbers every year, but when we actually with the safety, I'm talking about the gradual decline of the trees, and with emerald ash borer, it's a greatly accelerated decline in the trees. So that's why public safety, we're concerned with getting the trees taken care of when they're identified. As far as the city's response to these two, the differences with Dutch elm disease, we do a notification to the public, we tag trees, same with emerald ash borer. And then we do have a 30-day requirement that the trees be removed, whether they're infested with emerald ash borer or they have Dutch elm disease. And then that can lead to penalties if that's not followed, and possibly a lien on a home. So as far as our tagging goes, we've tagged over 15,000 Dutch elm disease trees over the last 20 years. We've done only about 100 emerald ash borer trees. But more importantly, when we look into the future with this growth, we're anticipating Dutch elm disease trees to be tagged at the rate of about 500 to 700 a year, whereas we see EAB trees 10,000 plus in the next 5 years. So as a result of that, these last 2 points here with 2012, we have decided to change our tagging for this year. And we are going to continue to tag and remove city trees that are infested with EAB. However, we'll only tag private trees if they pose a threat to public safety. We won't go into backyards in areas like that and tag trees with EAB. We do recognize that this is going to be overwhelming for some people for their personal residence. They may have a lot of trees. We want to encourage them to take care of the problem, but we don't want to hold them to that 30-day requirement. Next year, 2013, we would be going back to our previous tagging of all trees with EAB or DED. Wanted to go over quickly a couple of management strategies. We're mainly looking at a couple of options that include tree removal, tree treatments, that's a chemical treatment, or a combination of those two. With tree removal, it's important to note that this will not stop the spread of EAB. Originally, the Department of Agriculture had a program to try to do this, remove all the trees, and they were hoping to contain it. That has long since been eliminated. We're not expecting that at all. And actually, the trees they're not showing symptoms for 2 to 4 years. So there will be a lot of trees to remove. So a removal policy or a program focusing on removals, you have to understand that there's going to be a lot all at once. The initial cost is very high to cut down trees, but also, more importantly, to replace those trees. And we would want to try to replace as many trees, obviously, as we can. There's a huge loss in the overall tree canopy if you strictly cut all the trees down. One of the benefits, though, is a proactive removal of trees. That is, trees that you don't know that they have EAB, you just cut down ash trees. That helps you to spread out the cost over the years. So proactive, in some communities, they started doing this even 5 years ago, where they didn't wait for it to happen. They just started to replace the canopy with non-susceptible trees. The insecticide treatment, there are a number of options out there that work very well. Some of them work better than others, but they can be very successful. They can be used to prevent the EAB from getting into the tree, and they can be used if it has a level of infestation. If it's less than 50% infested, it'd be willing to try, but those numbers get a little sketchy depends on the treatment method, what chemical you use. It is an option that I would encourage homeowners to use. I think that everyone should take a look at this and look at their backyard and decide if there's a way that they can treat these trees. If nothing else, just to offset a huge decline in their ash trees. The treatment of all city trees would be very cost prohibitive. We would have to treat trees indefinitely. So when you add up these costs and we look at removal versus insecticides, that's the key thing to remember, is insecticides will potentially be an ongoing cost indefinitely. You will have noticed, I'm sure by now, that some communities are supporting the idea of doing treatments on a large scale. A lot of times, what's not always clear is they're treating them to better mitigate the losses. They're doing it to spread this out. So they'll treat them for a while, and then they will stop eventually when they're ready to replace them. So the last option here is the combination of the two, and that's what we've done so far. And that strategy is looking at the composition of the trees and deciding to treat the highest quality trees and to to pick the high-profile trees. So some of the larger trees that are, have been in the community for a long time, that are healthy and solid trees, to treat those. And then you would choose the removals based on trees that are less desirable, trees that are planted under power lines, trees that are damaged, trees that show up on the inventory as poor condition. Those are the ones that you'd start with on that. So this would reduce the risk to public safety, and it would mitigate the impacts over several years. Our EAB management plan, as I said, we are doing things. I don't want to give the impression that we are just waiting to put a plan together. We are being responsive to trees that we find that are infested, but we're also doing treatments, as I mentioned earlier. The important thing to keep in mind is the numbers I gave you before and I'm about to give you is based on an old inventory. So we do want to do a new inventory, and we're planning that for next month and into the summer. And then we are putting together a 5-year treatment, removal, replacement plan. And we plan to bring that back to City Council late in the summer for review, for discussion, and for approval. So that's what we're working toward. And then we will continue to educate residents on chemical treatment options, removal and replacement options. And also, as residents call, we want to make sure everyone knows that we will, even though we're not tagging trees, we still will come out and inspect the trees. We will assist with the permitting if they need that. We will also make recommendations for replacements or whether or not they should treat. So we will continue to do that. This next portion here is a kind of a snapshot of the 5-year plan and a scenario that we can look at. We're not implementing this yet, but based on our old inventory, these are numbers that were put together to give you an idea of where we would be going. And as you can see, we're looking at a removal strategy that would take out all the ash trees that are less than 12 inches in diameter. So that 4,549, that's based on the old inventory. We would need the new inventory to actually adjust those numbers. But that's a very proactive approach, and we understand that. The thought is that with smaller trees, you can cut the trees down. A 6-inch tree you can remove fairly inexpensively and replace it and get another tree growing. If we choose to treat a 6-inch tree, we could be treating it for many, many years. So there's if you look at the costs on a curve, eventually the cost of a smaller tree like that, it's going to be far less expensive to just cut it down and replace it sooner. The next level there would be the removal of 50% of the 12 to 18-inch class. So the next size up, we would be doing 50% of them treat, 50% of them remove. Obviously, we already mentioned what criteria we would use, so we would treat the better trees, the ones that are in great shape that we think are there for the long run. And then in the next size class, the 18 to 24, we'd be looking at removing 25%, so less of the bigger trees, and we'd be treating the remainder of the 75% of those trees. And then finally, anything over 24, we would be treating. Again, this would be subject to inspection and conditions. We wouldn't treat it if it wasn't in high quality shape. Not going through this whole chart, but this is based on what the numbers are, what I just showed you with these different classes on the side here. Focus would be on the bottom, the numbers as we look at the individual costs to implement this. So of the 6,013 trees, those are ash trees, we would be looking at an annual cost of $47,000 to treat those trees that I just mentioned. The removal would be $532,000. That's over the course of 5 years. And then replacement costs, these are the numbers that get fairly staggering. That's, in the $2 million range.
These are all the ash trees in Lake Forest or just the city trees?
Good question. They are just the street trees.
Wow.
And that's why these numbers are somewhat conservative. So this is a summary of it, and you can see the cost per year is about $565,000, but keep in mind that treatment cost of $47,000 will keep going on as long as we want to protect those trees. So the total, $2,826,000, that's over a 5-year period. And then as you just asked, if you look at all the other properties, the golf course, the cemetery, all of our other holdings in the city, multiply this number by 3, 4, 5 times. We can't say for sure, but we know it's a lot more. Then you can well imagine that you are looking at removals now costing $2 to $3 million, replacements even more. Residents impact, this is huge. That's where we recognize that we have our hands full. The city has its hands full. Residents do too. And that's why I am encouraging them to look at treatment, because it's a smaller scale. But we do want to try to help residents with the costs. We do right now have a cost share program for parkway trees, so if they have a tree in front or they need a tree in front of their house on the parkway, we will share the costs on that. I know that has limited benefit for the homeowners, but that's one program. We're also looking at programs that we can help residents on to look at ways of purchasing trees at a reduced cost. Trees right now are very inexpensive, actually, because of the economy, but it would be nice to secure some programs to work out some deals with local nurseries to help residents. In addition to that, we do, as part of this EAB plan, we have a component for community outreach. We will continue to provide information to the public. We are expanding our website page. We have a page that'll be devoted to EAB. It'll have current information and things that will help residents. We'll continue to have articles in the dialogue, recreation brochure, Forester or Lake Forester, all those kind of things. We also want to add informational workshops to help homeowners. So we would like to open up the idea of having talks at ward meetings, at homeowners associations, garden clubs, community clubs, things like that. In addition, we will also be working with Open Lands on helping residents to determine the best choices for their tree selection. Obviously, we want to encourage a diverse tree structure for the whole community. We would like to encourage residents, and Lake Forest Open Lands is an obvious partner in that, but also using natives to replant. Finally, the future plans moving forward. We will continue to work on this plan for approval this fall, early in the fall. We will begin that citywide tree inventory in the next month, and then we will continue to monitor the ash population and perform removals as needed. And then we will continue with the treatments as we've started. The 2013, we plan to complete the inventory. That's our hope. And we would then like to develop a comprehensive urban forest plan. That's broader than just EAB. When we have the EAB plan together and the inventory, we want to look at it on that level. That's a community-wide, all the trees, a plan for managing our urban forest. So I would invite Peter Gordon, our city forester, up. Whoop, sorry about that. Ian, do you have any questions for us?
I have a question about Lake County.
Okay.
We have Lake County Forest Preserves within our city limits. What are we doing to coordinate with them, and what are they doing regarding their ash trees?
Lake County Forest Preserve, their position on trees in natural areas is to not remove them. And I'm talking about trees that don't present a risk to public safety. So if they're along their trails, they will take them out. If they are in a high-quality natural area, they would not. And the idea there is that more damage would be done to those areas by the removal process. And since we're not trying to slow the spread anymore, there's not really a reason to take them out. I would also suggest that for us, as a city, that we look at that same policy. I think that in some of the natural areas like open lands, I would suggest that we leave them there. They would act as habitat and they would not present a threat.
I mean, they die.
Yes.
Talk about big trees, they die.
Yep.
They lose their leaves.
Yeah.
What happens? At some point, they fall over, don't
They
they?
do break apart. The main stem, though, will stay up for many years. That's why we have to be very selective about allowing people to do that. You can't do it if there's any risk to public safety. Otherwise, it's good.
To further add on that, we have tagged diseased elms on the Forest Preserve property before. So, for example, over where you live, if it bordered your property, sorry, for the Forest Preserve property by you, if it bordered your property and your neighbor's property and posed a threat, then certainly we would go ahead and follow the ordinance and tag those trees. But if they were kind of, if you will, in the back 40 and there was no trails and no residential homes, then we'd probably leave those. And we're all faced with those properties, like forest, open lands, and the city included. And they're very obscure places to get to and certainly to reach. And to Chuck's point, sometimes we cause a lot more damage. So we want to address the immediate threats to backyards and to right-of-ways as well.
I have a question on removal. With the elm trees, unless I'm mistaken, we had to cut them down and then haul the logs off to someone who was licensed or approved to do that? Was that the case?
The way the ordinance reads is that the logs have to leave the city limits.
Okay. With the ash trees, because we're not trying to slow the process down, and speaking from somebody who now hires tree service but wouldn't have wanted to earlier in my life, you know, I wouldn't have wanted to incur the cost of calling a tree removal place. I would want to go out with my chainsaw and cut it down and stack the firewood up in the woods. Will that option be available with this? It would greatly reduce the cost to residents.
Currently, the way the ordinance is written, it does not address that. It still addresses the removal of diseased wood, either through chipping, through taking it outside the city limits, or even references burning. So there are some things that we need to address in that ordinance. Again, we don't necessarily want it to linger here because there will be plenty of people who are treating their trees, and so we really want to kind of abate that nuisance.
So this dead tree would house larvae for years and years and years, even though there's no green wood left?
The dead tree wouldn't, but if you're talking about taking it down when it's partially dead and keeping it around for a year or two, there's a good chance that you could have larvae then hatch the following year. So it all depends on timing. So if it's a dead tree, hopefully we would address it in the next year or two. If it's something that's slowly dying and you choose to remove it, then certainly there could be a threat for at least a year.
Well, I would just ask from a citizen standpoint, if it is inevitable that a lot of them get infected, that we give some latitude to people.
Sure.
Maybe once a month we could pick up wood or something, because it's going to be overwhelming for
Well,
a
I
lot
think
of people.
the city does have a number of programs, including the compost center. We do offer pickup through our normal recycling program, and then the forestry program also allows a small pickup fee for any brush at the curb.
What about diseased wood?
Diseased wood as well. We either have it hauled off by a sawmill that processes it through a coordinates with the state of Illinois, or we go ahead and we chip it and dispose of it. So we have a number of ways of doing that that are really user-friendly to the residents, and I think there may have been several of you who've taken advantage of it in the past.
We are, along with that, we are identifying sites throughout the city that will act as storage areas, because we realize that when we do these removals, if we can't chip them all, there are uses for some of the larger trees. There is a huge movement in wood utilization, and people are taking these logs. The heartwood is unaffected by emerald ash borer, so it's very usable wood, and we're taking something that's a huge problem and getting something good out of it. So we'll look into those options. And also wanted to mention that wood chips, if they do chip logs or branches, they can be used as long as it's chipped down below an inch. So if you have the right equipment, as the city would, the chips they don't all have to be disposed of. They can be used.
Chuck, have we looked into a baseball bat factory?
There are communities absolutely doing that. Ash is perfect for that. Also used for trim and a lot of different wood products. Ash is a pretty good wood for that.
Do we need to buy another chipper before they're all sold out, or do we need to, get ahead of the curve and?
Believe me, we'll let you know on that.
Well, and actually, that's a good point, and I'm glad you raised that, because we have obviously limited manpower and limited resources when it comes to our equipment, but we also realize that as this progresses through all the North Shore communities, that contractual services will also be limited. Not only the city of Lake Forest will be tapping into these, but so will the residents and so will other communities. And so when we get to some of those tree categories, like the 12 inches or less, things like that, it's very easily done without a aerial tower or a loader like we have. And so that certainly is a very cost prohibitive or cost option for the city of Lake Forest that could potentially save us a lot of money contractually to throw something else like that. So we actually are researching that price. Excuse me, Chuck mentioned areas like the golf course, like the cemetery. If we have our removal crew out on a road, we can't do any removals at the cemetery or at some of these other outlying areas because that equipment's tied up. So we really think that that may be an advantageous thing to follow up on.
Do you have any kind of a map of where it's concentrated in the city at this point? I mean, if a whole neighborhood is thoroughly infested at this point, should the neighbors be spending their money treating trees that aren't going to make it? And
Well,
where can we get ahead of
we
it?
have seen it in all four corners of the city. We have identified it quite recently, really heavy in the HO Stone subdivision. I've had an opportunity to talk with a number of residents there, and I've actually had some residents call as acting as liaisons, but unfortunately they didn't leave their number for me to get back to them. And so those are the areas that we want to get into, and even if they don't have homeowner associations, kind of meet with these liaisons to kind of tell them. One lady, for example, had to remove 17 trees. That was every ash tree on her property. And standing in that subdivision, it was clear to see that every homeowner in those several streets were affected by it. And so that seems to be one of the areas that I can honestly say will be very hard hit in the up and coming year.
Two questions. When a homeowner has to remove trees from their property, is the replacement requirement in effect? Or is that only when you're expanding in addition to your house and you want to take out a tree?
Yeah, we feel that
inch
adds
per
insult to
inch?
injury. And so this community is really good about replacing their trees. And so we don't necessarily put that into effect. We feel that people are going to do that. What is kind of unknown at this point is the loss of these trees are going to dramatically change people's landscapes. They may be using more water. They may be going from a completely shady garden to a sunny garden, and so they're going to have to reestablish other plantings. And so following up on what Mayor Cowhey said about finding relatively inexpensive plants of good quality for the residents, we certainly want to encourage that.
Second question is, since this is going to be a tsunami of tree removals, just like our electrical aggregation and other aggregate purchasing organizations, is there any consideration given to putting together an assortment of tree removal companies and making them available, maybe a wholesale or discounted tree removal cost in bulk to the citizens? Those contacts.
Currently, we have some residents in the Bowling Green Ranch area who are getting together and contracting with companies. They're getting the quotes and they're taking care of that. Obviously, our concern is that everybody's going to be after these companies, and we need to be somewhat conscientious and flexible on the time limit on that. So we can certainly look at that. The city has put out kind of a requisition for tree bid prices for city projects and what they would be based on per inch. Whether that carries over to residential is always difficult to say because of all the targets associated, garages, pools, things like that. So it's really hard for them to kind of offer a flat rate when they don't know all the other things.
The same thing, Peter, on the replacement side, you and I spoke about, possibility of trying to help the residents, through some type of a program where the city goes out and takes competitive bids from many nurseries and then offers those back to the residents. Any other thought on that? Have you come up with any ideas?
Well, we have talked to a number of nurseries, and they're obviously very happy to sell the city of Lake Forest a number of trees, and then we would have to figure out how to go ahead and logistically get those to our residents, and certainly working with Lake Forest Open Lands would be a good point of contact in starting that. We do have some things we have to work out logistically, like we do have to charge these residents tax. Although we're a wholesale tax exempt client, the residents would be charged with tax, things like that. And so now we're in the process of looking at 3 or 4 landscaping companies that do work in the city of Lake Forest and kind of just, I guess, getting prices for what they would charge a resident to plant, let's say, 1 3-inch white oak. And then that way we can at least post that. My fear is we can't ask every single landscaper that's on the city's licensed landscape list to do it, and so we're kind of just keying in with companies that have deep roots here to Lake Forest and who have been involved in Lake Forest, and as Alderman Novit knows, has donated a number of trees because of emerald ash borer.
Will there be a kind of I know you've done a lot of work with the PowerPoints, but a handout for residents. You've got a 12-inch affected tree. How long are the pieces you can leave at the curb? What do you do at the top of the tree? How low do you have to cut the stump? Can you do it yourself? Does it have to be bagged or tied or wrapped? Or,
Sure.
I mean, is there there's going to be a lot of questions.
Right,
that
we
are,
can definitely do a Q&A on that. We still have a lot of residents like yourself who like to do the tree removal. And so those are the residents that will obviously be addressing in this, and then we have those who contract it out, and typically it makes more sense economically to have it chipped and hauled off site. But we can absolutely do that. Chuck mentioned a full-page web page on that, and we'll go ahead and address those questions and kind of re-emphasize the programs that we currently have in place.
There's a lot of information out there now. It is starting to come around. People have been through a lot now in Michigan and Ohio. There's a lot being published about treatment. We can put together some citizens packs, just things that can get the information out. But the website, I think, is going to be a key.
my question's more, I've got a dead tree in my yard. I'm interested in how it's spread from Michigan and how many trees. The data's out there. There's the PowerPoints and lots of websites, but what do I do with the thing in my yard?
Yeah, and absolutely, that's part of what we would put on there. There's a lot of information about how to deal with it too.
Good.
Absolutely.
Just a couple questions, and, first, kind of expanding on what David had mentioned before about the self-help provision, because it's great in a way to save money, but it's frightening in a way also. If you are to try to remove a tree yourself from your yard, do you still have to go to the city to apply for a permit or license to remove the tree? And do you need any type of proof of insurance? Because the fear that I have in neighborhoods like mine where the houses are relatively close together, I don't know if I'd be horribly thrilled if my neighbor took a chainsaw out and started lopping away at the ash tree. Do you need a permit before you remove your own tree?
Sure. To answer your question, you always need a permit if it falls within the ordinance. And so, for example, 10 inches or greater in the front yard, 18 inches or greater in the backyard. In regards to your question about insurance, we have a licensed list of landscapers. Those are for-profit companies. It's geared towards companies, not towards homeowners. And so you obviously may have homeowners insurance or you may have health insurance, but that particular ordinance and the way that it's written is geared towards profit companies. And so both residential and profit companies are required to get a permit.
Okay, so just don't go out in the yard on a Saturday and start cutting away.
Better to call us first and ask questions than to go out there with your chainsaw.
Make sure it's an ash tree.
Yeah.
Well, that actually brings me to another question, which has to do with your staffing. I was just looking at the numbers associated with tagging, and it looked to me like, if you think about it, that every time you're gonna go inspect, maybe you get called, maybe you don't, but you pretty much got to go into every yard in the community you've got to identify all these trees, you've got to tag them, you've got to notify the homeowner, you've got to enforce the ordinance. I mean, it looked to me like you were gonna, it's probably 1 or 2 full-time people just to do the tagging exercise, much less coordinate all the other things we just talked about.
Right.
I mean, you've got thousands of trees a year over the next 5 years that are gonna be tagged and removed or treated or what have you. I just, do you guys have I don't know, can you hire some temporary staff or
Well,
something
it's
to?
definitely a daunting number, and we realize that. When I
Contract
first started
employees or
21
something?
years ago, that was something that I did, was tagging the trees, and at the time, I could get around the city twice when it was just Dutch elm disease, and as the city's grown, we've only been able to maybe get around the city once just for Dutch elm disease. So we've recently talked about interns, not only for the application of putting together a tree inventory, but also for tagging. And we also have talked about the threshold. Because with Dutch elm disease, we can see clearly that the tree has a fungus, we need to establish a threshold, and maybe that threshold is 30% decline. And once I think the residents know how to identify it, certainly our interns can do that, and you're right, we'll take advantage of those types of programs in the summer. But logistically, it's going to be certainly a challenge for us.
I have a feeling you may be a little surprised with what happens to your telephone lines tomorrow morning.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, and certainly Peter has let me know about concerns with staffing to handle this. And the other thing to keep in mind is that we have a lot of other responsibilities with our parks and our forestry, and that's the section that takes care of that. So we don't want services to decline. So that's the thing that we're looking at, is that balance.
And it's a temporary situation.
Yes,
It's not,
right.
this is a thing, this is a wave that'll go through over a, whatever you said, a 5 to 7 year period, and then you won't need all this anymore. So you have to be careful how we manage that.
Although it will always be here like Dutch elm disease. And so although there may be a wave, that will be our largest number of trees coming down in the shortest period of time, but it will never go away. And so we'll be dealing with Dutch elm disease and emerald ash borer. And as some of you know, we've just heard recently that the city of Chicago may have eradicated emerald or Asian longhorn beetle, but it may have been found in another community. Unfortunately, that insect goes after maples. So,
Yeah, we'll save that. We don't want to.
Hey, one more question. You know, we were hearing that from me, one more from me anyway. Some of the trees will survive and some won't. Is there any indication, if you walked in your yard, could you tell which ones would survive, or
As far as if they're infested, because
if they're infested, they're going to die, right?
yes, and
But some of them, they said what, 80% will die and 20% will live eventually?
Well, I don't. I would suggest to you that every ash tree in Lake Forest is susceptible, and according to most accounts, it looks. I mean, every tree will die
Every ash will
unless
die in
it
Lake
is
Forest.
treated. Yes.
Unless it's treated.
You know, some would
So
anticipate
treated or it's going to die?
treated or it's going to die is basically the bottom line.
There's no
on that.
20% that's going to live?
Without being.
No, not by
Nothing to stop
anything
it.
that I've seen.
Because I heard that, I don't know where it is.
Yeah, it's, and that's, the other thing that's a little startling is some would probably suggest that a vast majority already have emerald ash borer to some degree in Lake Forest. So we're, that's why we're going to see a lot in the very near future. So I wouldn't count on any 20%. I don't think residents should think, well, I'll just wait it out. If you don't act now with treatment, I wouldn't count on them being around.
And will you be helping people navigate? I mean, you mentioned before that there were multiple different chemical treatments.
Yeah.
And that some trees are too far gone and it doesn't make sense and all that. And I can imagine we're going to also be visited by a large number of newly formed companies purporting to solve all your ash borer problems with
Already
magic
there.
chemical
Yeah.
ABC that only cost you $5,000.
Yep.
And, you know, hopefully you'll be able to help the citizens through,
Yeah.
you know, sorting through some of those claims and what the right treatments are for certain situations and so forth.
Yeah,
But again, more
absolutely.
people, right?
We will continue to educate on that, and we're glad to come out and look. Obviously, if you're right and the phones are ringing off the hook, there'll be a point where we may have a hard time keeping up with that. But right now, if people call, we will come out and look. We do have a lot of information we could give people, today as far as treatment options. There's a few chemicals that are good, but we can also make recommendation on local companies that'll come out.
We had a company that came out and quoted us $300 for our big 27-inch ash tree, and about $200 to $150 for some of the smaller ones. And I went to the hardware store for about $30 a tree and got the Bayer product that said.
Yes, not familiar
And
with it.
in the Q&A that you put together, I think it's also, if you're an elderly neighbor, do you have to really spend $5,000? Can you go to the hardware store? Can those kind of options be part of your
Yes.
program?
We already have that kind of stuff. It's not stuff that we put together, but we have stuff that will show the difference. I have a chart that shows that product, other products. That one, it shows the statistics and
I don't know if it's good or not. I hope it is. It's a big tree we've been trying
Well, the
to protect.
homeowner, the Bear one, not as good as others, that's for sure. There's a couple products that are certainly better, and this would spell that out. If people contact us now, we could give them those publications. And the easy way to get that information out fast, that's something that would be on the website. They can click on a link and they'll have that comparison. And it's boiled down pretty nicely. They don't have to read, a whole article about all the statistics. It'll show you the basic information.
Just had a quick question and unfortunately, a pragmatic question. The city is going and removing trees on city areas at this point. And as we've had the experience on June Terrace and a few other areas, it comes as quite of a shock to neighbors when they come home at the end of the day and their block is now empty and a lot sunnier than it was before. The city and its tagging, what would a tag look like on a tree that's going to be removed, kind of to lessen the surprise to the neighbors? Because again, if we could warn people so they know it's coming, they could mentally prepare. I remember walking down June Terrace a couple of years ago when they had their episode with the ash trees going, and truly it wasn't anyone's fault, but it was hurtful walking down that block just because it was virtually every tree was removed from the street. So again, just getting in front so people know it's coming. What's a tag look like?
Sure. Well, and we do have tags and we have door hangers. And so what we do is we go to every resident's house before we go on their private property and even into the city parkway. The one to the left is for Dutch elm disease. The one to the right is for emerald ash borer. That's how we distinguish the two. Emerald ash borer obviously being green, so we decided to use green tags. So we go ahead and we put these door knockers on people's house, letting them know that we were there, letting them know that they have diseased trees in their own yard. And then if, for example, we don't tag the tree or they've called about it, or another reason, we have another tag here that lists a number of reasons why the tree may be coming down. But this is actually what we put on the tag itself. It gives us a number, we can track it that way. It says why they need to take it down, the number of days to abate it, and also references the fact that we do have an ordinance in. The previous slide that I showed you also says that they would be getting a letter in the mail. So we try to do it. We try to have vibrant colors. Dutch elm disease, you may see hot pink ribbon on those trees. Emerald ash borer, you'll see vibrant green ribbon. So we try to really draw attention to those things.
Okay. So,
But I think Alderman Novit's question was, are you going to have a procedure where you notify neighborhoods in advance of coming in and clear cutting them?
with these tags.
Well, one thing I
Or
would
just some
mention
other way,
too,
because that's a
along with
different
what
process,
Peter,
right?
no, I'm sorry, what Peter had said, with that inventory that we're doing this summer, we will be using a new software program. It's a tree management tool. That's going to help us with the efficiency on that. So it's based on GIS, Geographic Information System information. So we can look at a block of trees and we can select those. We can send out mailings based on, we can tell people we're going to trim in their neighborhood. We can tell them we're going to remove. We could do individuals. That technology we're working on right now as part of that inventory. And that's one of the reasons that it's not just a count of trees. It's something that allows us to manage the population. Very efficient. It's also got a resident component so that when we get a call, the person in the office can be looking at that tree and they can let them know what's going on. I think we're really going to improve our efficiency that way and our relations with the residents.
But they will be tagged before they're removed, so
Yeah.
it'll be apparent.
It will be. No one should go out and, no one should have to call us and say, what happened to that tree? They should have been notified. There'll be some way that they'll know.
Thanks.
Chuck, do you want to speak briefly to the tree inventory proposal that you're going to bring to the council at, I believe, the May 7th meeting?
Yes. We are working with Davy Tree right now to come up with a proposal. We will be looking at trying to secure a contract with them. They would supply personnel that would be inventorying the trees throughout the city. We would like to supplement that with our own internal efforts. And we are looking at interns, staff, however we can get as many done as possible to stretch those dollars. We would like to get as much done this year so we don't have to come back next year and have a large need for a lot of trees. It is fairly expensive, so we are going to bring that back to you next month. Right now, we have budgeted $20,000 for that. We did talk a few weeks ago about extending that to $40,000, and we would like to present that next month. We do want to do the homework, though, to make sure that we have a plan that we can get the maximum amount done out of this. So that's what we're working on right now.
And when you say interns,
Yeah.
is that a potential summer job for any college kids, or?
It could be, and we do want to make sure that we get people that have some knowledge of trees, but we could have them working with city staff for a while. That would be my vision of it, is to have them working with Peter's staff or Peter, and then when we have confidence that they can identify species. Condition is tough, that we need people that can that have basic skills. I'd love to have some forestry majors. That would be a fantastic bunch to get out there.
Okay, thanks.
Might there be a merit badge that somebody could work on with you?
I was going to say,
We could work on that.
this looks like a job for the Boy Scouts.
Yeah.
We'll get their names before they leave.
Yeah. Alderman Novit mentioned the fix-up day for the affordable housing project
Oh,
as well. I mean, that's another.
Forest Park also.
There's plenty.
Yes.
Thank you, Chuck. Thank you,
Thank you.
Peter. Any other items for council discussion this evening? No, hearing none, I'd entertain a motion for adjournment.
Move to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Second.
We got to get on with it. Come on, guys.
George got it.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you. Thank you, Scouts, for coming out.